Welcome to the ANEW Body Insight podcast, empowering and inspiring your journey to optimal health. Hosted by Dr. Supatra Tovar, clinical psychologist, registered dietitian, fitness expert, and author of Deprogram Diet Culture. Rethink your relationship with food, heal your mind, and live a diet-free life. And Chantal Donnelly, physical therapist and author of Settled, How to Find Calm in a Stress-Inducing World. We follow our guests' journey to optimal health, providing you with the keys to unlock your own wellness path. Tune in and evolve with us.
Hello, and welcome to the ANEW Body Insight podcast. I am Chantal Donnelly.
And I am Dr. Supatra Tovar.
You are indeed. And today we are here with author and coach Deanna Moffitt. Really excited to have you here.
Well, I'm thrilled to be here. Thanks so much, Chantal. It's a pleasure to be here.
I'm going to talk a little bit about who Deanna is, and then we're going to get into some really great questions. Okay, Deanna Moffitt is an accomplished speaker, life coach, and author of the book, The Rewrite: Change Your Life One Story at a Time. She has traveled the country providing workshops and speaking to leadership for companies such as Google, Marriott, American Express, Coca-Cola, Delta, and so many more. With an eclectic background in project management, leadership development, Qigong, improv, comedy, and storytelling, Deanna brings her whole self into every situation while she masters the art of conversational intelligence. The word people use most to describe her is energizing, and I am going to say that the word I use to describe her is dear, dear, dear friend. Yay, so glad you're here.
Thanks, Chantal. Although I have to tell you, that's probably more than one word.
Oh, that's true. Just friend doesn't sound right. It's got to be dear friend, at least.
Yeah. Dear friend. Yeah, I love
it. You need more words, Chantal, more words. Deanna, it is so lovely to meet you. I'm so excited for this interview. I've been looking forward to this. And I have heard that at age 36, you were on your way, had this successful career. You were a senior project manager in the corporate world, and then something major shifted in you. Please, please, please enlighten us on why you had a change of heart and then what you did next.
Yeah, well, I'll give you the real story. There's a story that I give to other people, but because you guys are good friends, I'm going to give you the real story. And the real story is I was in a relationship with someone. I had been doing improv here in Portland, Oregon. I'm in Portland right now, staying with my mom. And I was doing improv with someone who was also, I was in relationship with, and I had just bought a house, and I didn't love my job by any means, but, I was kind of getting the golden handcuff situation where I was making good money. And this person that I was dating, he, about 6 months after I bought the house, he goes, you know what? He goes, I want to move to Chicago and do improv there. And I was like, what? I just bought this house. I couldn't fathom how that was going to work out. And he stayed. He did make that declaration, and then we lived together. And he stayed in Portland for another year, kind of get his finances in place, and then moved out to Chicago. And I was in this job doing very well, but sucking my soul dry. And after 6 months, I saw him patching it together, figuring it out. And to be honest with you, this is what my real talk is. I thought, if that dum-dum can figure it out,
anyone can.
I can definitely figure it out. And so I had such a supportive team and people that I worked with at the company that I was at. And my boss said, Deanna, when I told her that I wanted to leave and go to Chicago, she said, you have a job for as long as you need. I know you have a house to sell, whatever you want, whatever you need to do. And I literally put the house on the market, and it sold in 4 hours. And I was off, and I was scared out of my mind. I didn't have anyone that I could look to say, oh, this is how you leave corporate America. This is what you do. And I remember making a list of all the things that I needed to have in my home when I landed in Chicago, of which I don't think I got any of those things. And I realized that I felt like I needed those things because I needed them here in Portland because I wasn't really happy in my life. And all those comforts, creature comforts, felt like what I was living for. And once I just went to Chicago and started doing something that I absolutely loved doing, I realized all those other things just didn't matter at all. And I had such a great time. I spent 11 years in Chicago and I had such a great time. And I have to admit, I was way older than most of the people that I was performing with. You know, at 36, most of the people come into Chicago right after college, maybe even some right after high school. So a bunch of 20-year-olds, you know, and me, but I had a blast and was so glad that I made that shift.
Did you ever run into your ex? Did you do improv with your ex as well?
Oh yeah, we stayed together. When I say he was a dum-dum, listen, he's now my ex. I wasn't saying that. I stayed with him the entire time I was in Chicago.
Okay. But now he's a dum-dum.
Yeah.
For those 11 years in Chicago, he was not. All right. I have heard about this life of yours that you lived in Chicago doing comedy improv, but we've never really done like a deep dive on what that was like. And if you have any, like, who did you hang out with? Do you have any great memories?
Oh yeah.
What was that part of your life like?
I have so many great memories. You know, it was almost like I was replaying. I didn't have a normal college experience. I went back to college as an adult. Because it was all these young folks, I kind of re-had a college experience, patched a bunch of jobs together, performed all over the place. I actually worked on cruise ships for about 18 months of my life. So 3 winters in a row, I went and toured all over the place and did the Mediterranean and Hawaii and the Caribbean. And you know, it was a time for me to understand the importance of play. And what I started facilitating even back then, I started using improv as a facilitation tool, working for companies like Second City and Improv Olympic, and going into companies and universities and teaching how what we do on stage is actually quite applicable to pretty much anyone. No one has a script for their life. And so how do you stay present? How do you stay in the moment? How do you really listen to people? And it gave me a lot of life lessons and really the importance of play. And since leaving that or going on and doing other things, I recognize for me, if it's not lighting me up, if there's not something that like, I love doing this, I just don't want to do it. I just don't want to do it. Because I had that muscle of kind of work and pleasure has been so honed that it's a real challenge for me, the idea of going into work to do work. It doesn't mean I won't do it every once in a while, but it's not something I love to do.
Oh, wow. Well, so you had this long career essentially in improv. How did you transition to becoming a life coach and inspirational speaker? We want to know about that pathway that you took.
Yeah. While I was in Chicago, one of the things that I started doing on the side, improv, you know, I still love improv and I did it for a long time, but I have always been someone who wants to expand my experiences. And so somewhere along the way, I started a storytelling show with a producing partner called This Much Is True. And I loved storytelling. I really loved it. And then started teaching it at Second City. And I think that was a really great tool for me at the very beginning to understand how we shape our stories, how we shape our narratives, the stories we feel are important to tell about ourselves. And I realized that 11 years in Chicago was long enough for me. It is cold there, very cold, and also very hot. And I just miss the West Coast. I grew up in Portland, as I said before, and I just loved the West Coast and wanted to come back. And my partner, the person I was with, said, great, let's go. And then literally we were here for 3 days. And he then had to go to Europe to do some improv training with a bunch of people around there. And I sat in an empty apartment for about 3 weeks the day before he gets back, all of our furniture arrives home. And then he comes back, and through a series of conversations, I recognize that this relationship is about to go south.
Oh
And
no.
yeah, this is why he's a dum-dum.
Exactly. This is what I was thinking. I was thinking that.
I say it with love now. I mean, it all has worked out for the best for both of us, for sure. But he had come to the realization he was in love with someone else, the person he was traveling with. He wanted to go back to Chicago. And fortunately, I mean, as the universe works in such wondrous ways, our stuff had literally come the day before I hadn't unpacked anything. And so he
Wow.
just packed his stuff back on the U-Haul and drove himself back to Chicago. And I was like, oh, I've got to figure stuff out. Oh, I went on one audition for a commercial, actually got a call back, but also realized I definitely do not want to do that. I felt like I needed to have just a little bit of control
Oh
and
yeah.
not wait around for people to say, you're who we want. I wanted to bet on me. And so I had been working, I'd been doing facilitation using improv. And I'd also started working for a company that did more traditional leadership development. And as it happens, I got hired, and literally like a month later, they got a big, huge contract to do virtual trainings, of which they hadn't been doing a lot of those. And this is well before COVID, well before everyone got on Zoom. And so I was doing great through their certification. They hired me on to this contract work. I worked for like a year.
Wow.
I got really good at doing virtual facilitation. But all that time that I had spent doing improv, to be able to bring that into the room and understand that sometimes really good training, there is fun in it. There's sense of humor. There's a really presentness in it. I can read a room really well. I can see what people.
Yes.
And yeah, so that's how I started in the leadership development, is kind of taking those improv skills and taking them into the room. And I started coaching. I was going to a CrossFit box right near me. When I first got to LA, I needed to pay for friends, so I went to CrossFit. And I needed to find my community. I don't know if I love the folks that I met there, but my body did not. But one of the part owners of the box was a guy named John Kim, who's known as the Angry Therapist. And he's really kind of blown up now. But he used to run these classes called mindset classes for the athletes. And I was really curious about it, because I had done so much facilitation at this point. And he just offhandedly mentioned that he runs a coaching school as well. And I was like, I wasn't even really sure what coaching was at the time. But I thought, oh, I'll just throw my thousands of dollars down and see what happens. And I went through it, and I was still at a loss for how to coach. At the time, it was just a tiny coaching school. Really didn't have its legs. And I offered up that I thought after I went through it, I said, John, I think you need to have another class on how to question people, because I still don't know how to have a conversation with someone. And he goes, oh, well, would you teach that? And I was like, John, I've never had a client. I don't know what I'm doing. He goes, oh, you'll figure it out. And I think
Wow.
because of all that improv experience that I'd had, I knew I could figure it out. There's this whole adage of just saying yes and well before you're ready. And so I said yes. And I'm so glad I did, because it really sent me down a path of learning about the power of our questions. And went and got certified in appreciative inquiry, which is just a way of questioning, taking ourselves into the future state, and framing our questions in a positive way, because so often we're asking ourselves terrible little questions.
Yes,
And
we are.
right? Like, what's wrong with me? When am I ever going to get this right? And why aren't I loved? And all these things. And yeah, it just kind of, as we do, like, just keep going in the direction that as I said earlier, just kind of lights me up or gets me excited. And then I would start coaching, and I really love it. I love group coaching. I still love speaking. But I think my heart is really seeing, gosh, the 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 power and ability for people to kind of unfold into themselves. This truer sense of who they are without the stories, without the beliefs, without the world trying to tell them who they are, but kind of coming back into their core and their
Oh, I
question
love that.
of who are they
I
really?
love that. I think you can tap into that if you ask people what they were like when they were kids.
Yeah.
I think that that's the core of who people are when they, before all of the conditioning, before all of the, negative influences and the names that they've been called when they were 6 years old, 7 years old. I think that that's their purest self. Would you agree with that?
Well, I love that. Yeah. I mean, if you look at my life, what I was doing when I was 6 years old is I would lock myself into the bathroom and read the newspaper aloud. I wanted to be like a newscaster. I wanted to perform. I wanted to use my voice. So it's makes complete sense that I love to speak and be a speaker and be in front of the room and use that. I'm so curious if that was true for you, Supatra and Chantal. What were you doing when you were 6 years old?
I was singing into a hairbrush and I'm tone deaf, so that didn't go so well. But here's a microphone right here. So,
Yeah.
you know,
And also, were you
Hmm.
dancing when you were singing?
I was dancing a lot. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I was a
that's definitely,
spinner. I like to spin. I would like spin in my backyard. I just thought spinning was everything. And I think I was also, just a natural performer. I always wanted people watch me spin and watch me play characters. I always wanted to play Dorothy and have all of my other friends play the other characters, but I wanted to be Dorothy. So definitely I was a performer at heart too.
Yeah, me too. I remember my parents would play pinochle and they'd have big pinochle parties, and I would do my Cher impressions on the hearth, on the, on the fireplace. Oh,
I was going to say, do it for us now.
oh, yeah, terrible, but
Come on.
I love it.
yeah.
Yeah. Now, you had mentioned that improv really influenced you when you were
Mm.
working for the other companies and doing speaking for other companies. Does it influence you in your coaching and your writing?
Um, I think the ability to stay present to what's right here in front of me has been such a gift of really taking that from improv. I don't often go out into the future and spin out about, what's going to happen, or because with improv, you just really build a muscle of being present to what's right here. The gift is always here in the present moment. If I go off into the future and trying to plan something, but Chantal and Supatra, you're still in this scene, I can't possibly meet you where you are on this stage. So that is really huge. And I personally think that change can be really difficult for a lot of people.
Oh, yeah.
And if I can bring a dose of humor into it, I think we can have a little more fun with it, right? People can think about and really grasp onto and really make things really even harder and more difficult for them. And sometimes a little levity about how crazy this situation is in the first place. And, be able to raise our emotional wavelength out of the worry or concern or frustrations, right? Change is so impossible from that energy. But if I can bring you up into a more joyful, hopeful, more future forward, positive, then change is way more possible. Thinking about where you want to go is way more possible. So, yeah, I think the muscles that I've learned using improv are definitely present in the work that I do today.
Yeah. They say, I've heard it been said that joy is the highest spiritual state.
That's
And when
awesome.
you look at somebody like the Dalai Lama, you never see him do anything but just giggle and laugh, and he's always smiling, he's always joyful. And I think that there's something to that. And in raising your energy level to experience joy, you have to be in the present moment. You
Yeah,
can't be thinking about the future. You have to be connected with what's happening right now.
yeah, definitely. And I think that's really critical right now for all of us to be considering, because I think the world outside, everything that's coming into us, is asking us to be in a different state. than the present or joy, right? It's asking us to go into a fear state or what if, and go into the future of all the terrible things that are going to happen. But man, if we can stay present, and I always believe that we are going to find what we look for. And so, the muscle of also looking for those things that bring us levity, that bring us joy, that we can find beauty in, that too is a muscle of looking for what we want to be seen. It's all available to us. I think the world is a field of potential.
Yes.
So look for what you want to see.
Yes. Is that what inspired you to write The Rewrite? What were your, main inspirations for this book?
What was my main? Good question. Actually, it was marrying the past of what I had done with storytelling. Just that was kind of the key of like recognizing when I taught storytelling. It was so interesting to me, the stories that people chose to tell about themselves in front of an audience. So this was storytelling for performance, right? And, for a lot of people, their first story, it was always interesting, the stories that they would consider that would define them. Like maybe this is the only story they're ever going to tell, but they want to tell this one. But then as I became a coach, it just became so obvious to me that we all tell stories about ourselves. And some of us are really, truly Stephen King level horror stories about ourselves, right? About what we think are possible and who we think we are. And recognizing that even for myself, Renee, right, is like, oh, I'm in a story right now about this. I actually have no truth. I have no knowledge that this is true about myself or this situation. And I actually don't feel good when I tell myself this story. And so as a coach, being able to catch that with other people and challenge that thought and have them think about, oh yeah, for them, that is a story that you are telling yourself. Mm-hmm. If you had the opportunity to rewrite that in any other way, how would you do that? So for me, I remember my mom, after she got divorced, she was kind of going through her own personal development. And I was about 12. And I found on her nightstand the book, The Power of Positive Thinking by Norman Vincent Peale. And I remember taking that book on the bus and reading it on the bus. And for me, it was like, oh God, it was just such a kind of like, I can think about my thoughts. My thoughts, I could actually do something with my thoughts. They don't have to, I just don't have to believe them as they are. And I can change them if they're not serving me. So even at that age, at 12, I remember that being like a heat wave in my face. It was like, oh, there's a different way of being than what I'm experiencing right now. I want to be curious about that.
I always tell my clients that you are not your thoughts. Even if you've been thinking the same way forever and ever, that doesn't define who you are. I think that is a real powerful, eye-opening experience when you realize that you have the power to choose your own thoughts. And when you do, so much changes. I mean, this is the basis of cognitive behavioral therapy. This has been around, of course, with Norman Vincent Peale. This is, the tenet of so many people out there who have actually changed their life by changing the way that they think. I love that you're doing this with your clients. Do you think that they're really resonating with that? Because I can imagine that feels really empowering.
Yeah, especially when it's the first time that they're being confronted with the idea that that's just a story. For them to really kind of sit back and, kind of take that in and think about, well, how do you want to feel, right? And then what's the story that will support that? What's the thought that will support that feeling? Because as, Chantal has so well taught me over the years that the stories aren't just affecting your head. We have to connect this whole body situation, and the body is talking to the head as much as the head is talking to the body. So helping them really connect with, again, how are they feeling their body with those thoughts?
Right.
How do they want to feel? And what are some thoughts that could support that, as well as what do you need to do with your body. Chantal has really opened a lot of doors for me in thinking that, my belief is we can really do a lot of work in the head, but the body has got to be involved in this whole process of changing your story as well, because the stories are probably more embedded in your body than they are in your head.
That is so true. Well, we are loving picking your brain. We are out of time for this.
And your body. Loving picking both.
Yeah. Pick your brain, pick your body. We're picking it all. And we want to pick it more. So we are going to come back for the second half of this amazing interview with Deanna Moffitt. We are really looking forward to the second part. Thank you, Deanna.
Thank you both. Thanks, Chantal. Thank you, Supatra.
Thanks for tuning into the ANEW Body Insight podcast. Please remember, the content shared on this podcast is for entertainment purposes only and does not constitute medical advice. You can find us anywhere podcasts are streaming, on YouTube at my.anew.insight and at anew-insight.com under the ANEW Body Insight podcast tab. Follow us on our socials at my.anew.insight on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and Threads for more updates. Tune in next time and evolve with us.